Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, brought to you by Crone, dedicated to hay and forage producers. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Dan Ostrander. Dan's the owner of BD Rollers, and we're going to do things a little bit different today. Now, full disclosure, Dan provided me with a set of rollers to put in my John Deere 4990 swather with a 990 header, and I'm going to tell you about my experience with it, and I'm going to let Dan ask the questions today. So, Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back, John Paul.
This is the after-season review of the product, right?
Yeah, it was a good thing how we're doing this too. I like asking the questions, and how I think this is going to go is pretty good Q&A, I believe.
Yeah. Well, where do you want to start?
How easy were they to install? I mean, did you have any big setbacks? Was there anything that you'd have done differently from start to finish? Were there any big hang-ups, or were they as easy as we kind of advertised?
So, the problems that I ran into had nothing to do with the conditioner rolls themselves. Again, we're running a 4990 power unit with a 990 John Deere header. And we got in there thinking that all we had to do was get the bearings loose, and then somehow we'd be able to wiggle them out, wiggle the conditioners out. But there was actually a side panel on the right-hand side that had to come clear off on that header. And after we got done, we're not running new equipment. That's one of the things I really like about the conditioners is they do go in old swathers. You don't have to buy something new to have nice new conditioners. So after we got done dealing with all the stripped out bolt heads and rusted stuff, and that's what took the time, was the nuts and bolts and the hardware, and then learning how to take that right hand plate off. Once we got that done, it went back together in probably 3 hours, where it took us 6 or 7 or 8 to pull it apart. So once we figured out the assembly and disassembly of the head, it really was pretty straightforward. Getting the bearings in there wasn't any problem. I'm a big fan of a little bit of hot and a little bit of cold when doing bearings. So we actually put the bearings in the oven, warmed them up, and slid them on the shafts so they went on and fit nicely. And then we were able to cool them back. They cooled down slowly, and it worked really well. I do that anytime I lose a conditioner bearing, though. Mm-hmm. And then put the header back on, and we were off to the races.
Great. So you figured total in and out time was probably in that 10 to 12 hour range. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I should say that did take, it takes a couple of people. Those conditioner rolls, they're not a one-man pickup kind of deal.
Yeah, they're not light, are they?
No, they're really not. We did use the tractor and straps to support them as we put them into the header, and then one person on either side. So, it was kind of the disassembly wasn't a 3-person job, and the reassembly wasn't a 3-person job, but it was awful handy to have 3 people as we were physically putting the conditioner rolls into the swather.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I call it the timing of them, the bottom rolls, your stationary roll, your top rolls, your adjustment rolls. So, how did that go? As far as the splines and stuff, and your yoke and so on and so forth. How did that come together?
Interestingly, we put them in, and they just naturally set together.
They fell in.
They just naturally sat together, and I've timed conditioner rolls plenty of times.
Right.
But these just naturally sat together. We bolted the shafts in, and as you said, the top shaft is adjustable. And I just wiggled it around a little bit until I thought I was pretty close. And I'll admit that I thought on startup I was going to have a clump, whack, bang.
Right.
But we didn't. They really just sat together.
That's good.
Because they sit flush together.
Yeah.
They're not as prone to being off on timing as conditioners that are separated.
Uh-huh.
That's just my perspective. but
Yeah.
it fired right
Yeah.
up, and we went out and did a test cut.
What brand of bearings did you end up using? You bought those directly from the dealership, correct?
I probably went to a bearing shop in town. I don't remember off the top of my head, but you sell those bearings now.
We do now, yeah. I just actually put a warning on our website. It just went up here the last couple of days. We found out that the AGCO Massey Duals, for some reason, the dealerships have gone to a China Pier bearing, and we always use a Fafner
Yeah.
bearing. With those dual conditioners having the hydraulic tension system, we found out if you use that cheaper bearing, they fail. And it
Oh.
doesn't take long. Yeah. And we just started having that happen. We thought, what on earth is going on here? So did some research, and for some reason, the dealerships, the Ego dealerships, went to a cheaper Pier bearing, and it fails. It's got less load capacity and so on and so forth. So we actually had to put a warning and tell all of our customers, and it's just for that machine and the hydraulic tension system. Nothing else out there we've heard of anything else happening. So yeah, we had to we had to just go out and tell people. Had to go, gosh, this is because they were blaming us and the rollers. Well, we found out that no, it's not our rollers. It's the bearings that you put in there. So we have to make sure that whoever we sell those actual dual conditioner rollers to people in dealerships, we got to make sure that they use those specific bearings so they don't fail and stuff.
Very interesting.
So that's kind of like, it was really interesting.
The second time you have to do a bearing is the most expensive one. So there's a few things that I don't go cheap on. Tires and bearings are on that list.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so that's good. So everything went together good. So the next biggest thing was when you took your test cut, you went out there immediately to start cutting and stuff. How did you, from our instructions of the tension system and the setting of the rolls, how was that for you? Did you get it the first time? Did you set it about 2/3 of the tension, or explain to me how you set your tension and where did that end up?
I do remember that it took a little bit of it took more tension than I initially expected. Let me clarify. We did do a startup where we just ran it, and then we actually clipped kind of the lawn next to the shop at the very start. So we weren't actually looking at the crimp on that. But then when we went to using it on our first cutting alfalfa, the first 2 rounds, it was me out there making adjustments, looking at the stems, making adjustments, looking at the stems, making adjustments, looking at the stems, getting it right for my conditions. And tighter was the answer.
And this is the ready rod that comes up through the header, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And typically what we tell people is to go about 2/3-ish to start. And I'm guessing that's probably where you were, or maybe 3/4 somewhere in there.
Yep.
And yours being with a new stand and smaller diameter stems.
Yep.
That makes sense also. If you had a older stand and so on and so forth with larger, thicker stems, which a first cutting typically is, your best of the season. And you've got, everything's thicker and better, you hope.
Anyway. Right.
Yeah. So that would totally make sense that you had to go a little bit more than probably what we would recommend, but it's all about what you see. Where's the crush? Where's the crimp? How many leaves are you losing? Are you losing tops? What are you doing? Is it pinching stuff off?
We actually did get to a point where I backed it off. Now that you say that, we did start getting some leaf bruising, and the tops were broken off. Like you'd pick up a stem, and it would be exceptionally floppy because it's crushed all the way along the length of the stem. And then you get to the end and the top's just dangling down there. And that was my key to back off a little bit. That and like I said, that leaf bruising on the alfalfa shows up. It's just kind of black and greasy on the leaf instead of a normal looking leaf. When we got to that point, we did back it off.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we do recommend, and that's perfect because that's how we explain to people the few things that you look for is a as a limp stem. You
Mm-hmm.
hold it up and it falls over your palm. It just falls right over.
Yep.
Second thing is leaf bruising, making sure that it's not, like you said, dark and greasy type. That's definitely a sign of over conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And you just back it off. We like to see a slight bruising, if anything, and like thread-like lines almost kind of going through there. So you just see a little bit of that.
Yep.
And then also looking at that stem or that top. We don't want that detached. Now, what it does is it grabs it and pulls it through because it's so aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
and it breaks off that top. And there's kind of a little bit of a break-in period where the groove meets on top of the lobe when we're
Yep.
doing our process and manufacturing.
Yep.
And there's just that little
Ridge.
on top, correct? Yeah, and that's kind of a little bit of a pinch point there, of course, because it goes down into the valley of the lobe, so
Yep.
it will kind of pinch that off. So if and like I said, once we see that the stem is not detached, but it could be dangling there. That's what we don't want to happen is to have those tops lost, because if you're tedding or merging or whatever, that type of stuff,
it's an opportunity for smaller particles to fall out of the way.
Right, correct. Yep. And we want that whole stem complete if possible.
Yep.
So, well, that's great. That sounds like you did a perfect thing there. So that was good.
Let's take a break there and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
Get big and get better with special financing from Krone. Now you can get 0.9% interest for 60 months on Krone Big Pack Square Balers. That's years of savings at less than 1% interest. Plus, get 2 free pallets of Krone Excellent Twine with every Krone Big Pack. Get the bale size, density, and reliability that comes with every Krone Big Pack Large Square Baler. Go big, go Krone. Special financing ends November 30th. See your Krone dealer today.
Now, I actually had a problem. As we talk about conditioners, the question always, and I hear this all the time, and you see it in the advertising, maybe not yours, but, it'll take a day off of the dry time.
Oh, sure.
I'm here to confirm that I had to update my mental model. I was going from worn out steel-on-steel conditioners that probably you wouldn't want to put your arm in there, but you might have kept it kind of terrible.
Right.
My conditioners were in really bad shape.
Yeah.
So I was going from a very bad spot to a brand new top-of-the-line spot.
Uh-huh.
It, no doubt, on that in those first cutting conditions, I should have raked it a day earlier. No doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to be careful about that because obviously it's not going to be, if you have nice new conditioners in a brand new machine, the difference is unlikely to be that extreme. But in my condition, where I was going from old junky worn out 3,000 hour conditioners to something brand new, holy dang, it made such a difference.
Yeah. And that's what we do advertise, actually. You could get up to a day, 8 hours. You can get 2 days. It's just crazy. It's all over the board. But when you're, like you said, it's the comparison between old worn out rolls to brand new rolls. I don't care if you have our rolls or a Chevron groove type roll or what have you, or the steel. Anything brand new like that, it will do the job. It'll feed good. It will crimp. Now, the difference between ours and your regular crimping rolls that aren't tight together, you get more of that full-on crush in between each crimp, and that's what makes it softer.
You're not a kid.
Yeah, it's just such a night and day difference.
I've had a lot of folks ask me, and my neighbors around me that can come and see.
And you sell horse hay, right?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of horse hay.
Yeah,
historically, we've done some export Timothy. So, some of that first cutting did end up going to a beef cow guy, but it was because we put it in big bales, and my horse customers in big bales that weigh 1,250 pounds. They're just not ideal.
Not conducive to, right, yeah.
So a little bit of every market. But my theory on baling hay is put all the balers in the field and bale it as fast as you possibly can to make the nicest hay possible, and then worry about the marketing on the back end. Horse hay, export hay, we're trying to make really high quality hay.
not to get too sidetracked here, but what's your hay selling for small squares out there for premium hay right now?
Well, if you look at my Facebook ad, you'll see hay listed. Now we sell by the ton, but I'll do some
Right.
translation here. On our very top end hay, 300 to 360 per ton, and that 300 divided by 40 gets you to $7.50 for a 40-pound bale. Sorry, a 50-pound bale. Yeah, 7.5. For us, I would generally consider that profitable, but understanding that we're only 3/4 of our normal yield, it's not wildly profitable.
Right. Yeah, we're on our website. We're just developing a return on investment, an ROI type calculator. So we're really boasting or trying to really, when people, a lot of people call in and say, hey, I'm interested in your roles, blah, blah, blah. But I just bought this machine for $5,000, but
Yep.
your rolls, are $7 or $8 or $10,000
More than the
depending
price of the
on what
machine.
it is.
Yeah.
But our comeback is, well, if your machine is mechanically sound, you were going to have to do something to it when you bought it. So what we're trying to do is educate that farmer to say, hey, okay, this is an investment. I'm going to buy this cheaper machine. What else do I have to do to it? I have to put knives on it. I got to put new rolls in it. Well, you got to, when you're looking at this investment, it's like a car. You buy the car. You're going to have to put new tires on it or check out the air conditioning or what have you,
Yep.
So we're trying to really educate that farmer and help them to try to decide on how to spend their money the best way. Not probably by buying a brand new machine all the time, but buying a used piece of equipment, looking at it, and you put those numbers in there on our calculator on our website, and you go, okay, I put boom, 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 and then, that's why I asked about, how much hay is going for out in your neck of the woods. And you put those calculations in there and you press a button, you go, wow, okay, well, it's going to take me 2.5 cuttings to pay for my rolls or pay for this upgraded piece of machinery. So that's kind of how we're trying to approach things too, because I get that. I mean, I get it where people are trying to buy inexpensive stuff, but you got to think ahead and go, okay, well, what else am I going to have to do to it? We had one guy call in one day and go $1,000. It's like, well, what'd you expect? Yeah, you can buy a brand new machine ready to go, but you buy a new one or a used one, you put those new rolls in, it makes it like a brand new machine.
That's not too far off. I mean, it just isn't. Oh, okay. I had a couple of thoughts as you were talking. We did notice a difference in the texture. 100%. It makes softer hay when that stem is crimped. It just takes it, and imagine taking a straw and just smashing it and flattening it, and the sides breaking on the straw. That's the observation that I had all the way along. It's not like every 2 inches there's a bend in the straw. It's smashed all the way along the length of the stem. And then back on your return on investment concept, if we're talking about, roughly $7,000, $8,000, $9,000-ish, maybe a little cheaper with some promotions that you have going on right now. But just taking a rough $7,000, and for me, hay getting rained on might be $100 a ton swing. That's completely reasonable. That only takes 70 tons. And in my operation, I'm not nowhere near the biggest in the world, but probably above average size. We're trying to do 100 tons a day. So that's only 1 day's production. If we are talking about any amount of faster drying, I could literally have made that up in 1 day. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Those are real numbers for me.
Yeah.
My rained on hay sold for $100 a ton less than my non-rained on hay. So if it is the conditioners that make that difference, even 1 day for me, they made it worth the investment.
Yeah, that's how we do promote it too. Just that softer, more palatable hay when you break that stem from top to bottom, and open it up. You stop the aspiration process, so you actually kill the plant, so everything stops growing.
Yep.
And we've got I got a video. I think that was just posted here on the website and YouTube of a guy in the central part of the state. Same dang thing. He had side by side Massey's and with the the dual conditioner, and he put one of our sets in the front or in the back of the dual Massey. And he did just a little minute video, and he couldn't believe that was one of the first things he commented on was just the crimping and the flatness of the stem and how soft it was. And he went over a couple of windrows, and he goes, he held up a stem that was still round. It was crimped, yes, but in between each crimp was still a hard round stem.
Yep.
And one thing, did you notice that with that flattening of the stem, did you notice that, I don't know how you would really tell this for sure, except just by weight, but do you think that you got more volume in the bale because of the flatter stem?
I see where you're going with that thought process, where the baler would have an easier time compressing a flattened stem versus a round stem.
Right, because you just have more room in the bale, so everything goes flatter, and you can put more volume. So basically,
and in our market, density really matters because we're shipping hay along almost always. It's going, a local delivery for me is 15, 30, 40, 50 miles. When we do export hay, it starts by going 150 miles. Honestly, I don't know on that one. We're actually targeting a weight. So we are adjusting our balers to get the right weight in a bale. And we may have experienced heavier bales and then had to back it off and just didn't think about it being the stems. Yeah, it's plausible. Sure.
Yeah. And I might want to just kind of pay attention to that. The density of the do the balers nowadays. Just say you got a big old Krone square baler. And
sure.
You got your high density bale. I just wonder if they have a density meter. What do they have on that besides just your moisture? And
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, there's balers that read load and pressure. I don't know. I'm not sure how you would capture that.
I don't know either, but that's something we can ask the big guys someday, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be a great question.
That'd be especially since Krone is a sponsor. That'd be a good question.
Let's take a break there, and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
What's the big deal? Right now, get 0.9% interest on Krone Big M mower conditioners and Krone Big X forage harvesters with 36-month terms on Big X and 60 months on Big M. That equates to years of savings on the Krone equipment you need. Plus, get extended warranties on both the Big M and Big X, 3 years or 2,400 hours. Big performance, big throughput, big comfort. Go big, go Krone. Special financing ends November 30th. See your Krone dealer today.
We did an episode with a former executive from AGCO about just baling. And as he was talking about that, the concept that really stuck in my mind is that balers are trying to deaden the cell membranes. We're trying to reduce the springiness. That's what gets you a nice, tight, heavy bale.
Right.
And I think you're on to something here. That's a really good question.
I've thought about that for years and years and years. And, mine's a terrible thing to waste. You think of this, you think of that, and things go in and out. I'm like, gosh, if a person could get to these really technical things, because like you said, that flattening of that stem, it just takes away mass.
Yeah.
Instead of a round stem, you got, and it's already flat. So those cellular membranes inside that stem are completely flat. Did you see that some of the stems, when they were flat like that, or when it was dry before baling, did you see that it took on the corrugation of the roller, so it kind of looked like a roller coaster?
Yeah, it did.
At all?
Absolutely.
It's something.
Oh yeah, they're wavy. They're not. They're not crimped. They're not folded. It's wavy. Yeah. Okay. I did want to comment on my second cutting. As we got into that second cutting, it's like a blowtorch around here. It was 100 degrees, and 15% humidity. We had days that we dipped down into single digit humidity. That dries leaves real quick. Those are almost the conditions where you can cut a ton to the acre. We were dry this year, so our second cutting yield wasn't fantastic. We were around a ton to the acre. We probably could have been baling if it was just based on the leaves the second day. But of course, there's still stem moisture.
Yeah.
So we were getting into conditions where the leaves were essentially instantly dry. But having those stems, superbly conditioned, flattened, the stems dried faster, and we were able to make greener hay. Because in that condition, it's all about how long it has to sit in the field and get bleached.
Right.
It's way more about the bleaching. And it's not the conditioner that causes the problem in the bleaching. It's the availability of moisture and dew. I don't have a steamer, so we can't steam the windrows in the middle of the day. We're doing lots of early morning kind of baling. It did allow the stems to dry not as fast as the leaves, but closer. And in that condition, I don't think we gained a full day, but maybe a half. It's very fine stem, drought stressed kind of plant. Maybe we did gain a half a day in that condition. And we were probably baling the fourth morning, raking and baling at the same time because there was only like 3 hours a day where there was enough dew. It probably tightened up the window for baling a little bit there, but I don't think we got near as much as we got on the first cutting where the ground was wet, the air was a little moister, like those kind of thought processes.
For your second cutting, did you find that you had to tighten up your rolls a little bit or did you leave everything the same?
I think we left it pretty well the same. We took the first cutting pre-bud, so it was a very immature plant. Yeah, we made some nice hay. 68 TDN, 188 RFQ. The protein wasn't off the charts, but it was very digestible feed.
Great.
And then on the second cutting, it actually sold so fast we didn't even test it. So I don't have a good answer.
That's a good problem to have.
No, that's a great problem to have.
And so you did find that it went on that first cutting too, that quality was there in the visibility. You could a customer come up and go, wow, that just looks nice and green. That looks like some nice stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the comments that you got too?
100%. No, actually, I'm going to tell a story on one of my customers. She calls me up and right in the middle of second cutting and short on sleep. My wife tells me I got a little grouchy. This customer calls up and I want to come look at some second cutting. And we were right in the middle of baling it. And the bales were still out in the field. I kind of wanted to be hauling hay and not selling hay at that exact moment to get it off the field and into the barn and preserve that nice green color. And she came out and she says, I'll take it. And I said, what if I told you it was $500 a ton? And she says, I'd have to think about it. and we came back down to a more reasonable price. It allowed us to do an excellent job.
Yeah.
And we made some very, very high quality hay.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because, seeing is believing, and when you come out to the hay field and like your customer did, and you can just look at it and go, wow. And then once they touch it, especially the horse hay people.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I started having my customers do is touch the hay, feel the hay, knowing that it wasn't going to be pokey. And that actually worked as a selling point.
Yeah.
So that softness was a story that I could tell that helped my marketing. And it worked.
For sure.
It was real and it helped in the marketing.
Yeah, and that's just, that's such a great selling point. It's just that softness, the feel, instead of crimping and making pointy type breaks, you've got a flatter, more conditioned stem where the animals eat everything. They don't pick and choose. They eat all of it.
Yep.
Versus, going, getting sore mouth and going, well, I don't like this because this isn't soft. And it just makes such a difference for that customer and the animal, especially, of course.
Yep.
And for like dairies too, it's great.
Oh, I mean, we're going into a world where fiber digestibility is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not hurting it by conditioning it really well.
No. And, like getting back to real quick on just the setup of your setting of your rollers, making sure that you've got them set properly. You might have to fool around with it just a little bit more than your other rolls, but it's worth it. If you take that time, you set them properly.
Yep.
And if you can't, if you're struggling, you give us a call, because we talk to thousands of customers every year. And that's totally the ticket, getting that set just properly to condition that stem exactly what you want.
Yep. I do have to say that there is one noticeable downside. The fuel usage on the swather did go up.
Uh-huh.
And this was another adjustment to my mental model. I have a pretty good idea how long the fuel tank should last in that swather, and how many acres and under what conditions, and 4-ton hay versus 1-ton hay. I have a pretty good idea. I'm going to guess we used, don't hold me to this, but 15 or 20% more fuel in the swather. It was noticeable. But again, we were going from essentially no conditioning to the best. I can say the best. It is fantastic conditioning.
Yeah.
There's somebody out there that's going to argue with me, but it's really, really good conditioning. And that's probably something to be aware of, because my hired man, he called me and he says, "Hey, I'm going to need fuel." And I'm thinking, "Oh, you got both fields done?" No, you didn't. That's not possible. And I'm trying to figure out, why does he need fuel already? He's not done with those fields. Oh, it's the conditioners. So there was a light bulb moment in there. But those conditioners are staying in that swather. They're not coming out.
And we ask that question and get that question asked all the time. Does it take more horsepower?
Yep.
And does it use more fuel?
Yes and yes.
And our answer to this is yes. And depending on what you're cutting, it really depends on your forage that you're cutting, how fast you're going.
Yep.
Can you go faster with these rolls, because they feed really, really good. There's a lot of different variables that go into that, and it's really good to know if those are the hard numbers that we really don't have. So it's really good that you paid attention to that. And obviously, it, like I said, it was a light bulb moment. Wow, okay, well, it's definitely because of the rollers, because they're running tight together like that.
Yep.
They're going to use a little bit more. And plus, if you're doing, like you said, 1-ton, 2-ton, 3-ton hay,
yep,
you're going to find that the thicker the stand, it's going to take some more horsepower probably. You might even have to slow down just a titch, just because it's feeding everything and conditioning everything, versus a gapped roll where you've got stuff just feeding through there and maybe not even getting touched, and you've got a gap in there. So it totally makes sense that, that's probably going to be one of the, if you want to call it a downside, or just an extra added little bit of expense that you're going to have to factor into your cost of doing business. But again, you can probably, I was going to say, you can probably
super worth it.
Tack on a few more dollars to that bale when you're selling it,
Let's take a break there, and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
What's up, Hey Kings? You have a lot of choices when it comes to sourcing your equipment parts, but have you tried Messick's? We have $20 million in equipment parts on our shelves, and we pick up from C&H Parts Depots daily. All this inventory is available with same-day shipping with no upcharges or expediting fees. Messick's.com has exclusive features like transparent pricing, photos of parts, fit verification, alternative part options, and an obsolete part search tool alongside the manufacturer's drawings, so you're not guessing at what you need. We cover all the top brands, including New Holland, Case IH, Kubota, Krone, and Peckway, and more, all from our website. Our online tools are backed by 60-plus parts professionals who are just a call away, ready to find even the most obscure parts. So whether you're a seasoned farmer or a weekend enthusiast, think Messick's for a convenient and professional part shopping experience. Visit us at Messick's.com or call our parts hotline at 877-260-3528.
Messick's, a helping hand with your land.
I mean, maybe, but it's worth it. That's my final statement on the fuel issue. It's absolutely worth it to have that conditioning. Now,
Yeah.
my hay customers don't always appreciate a really good conditioning job.
Uh-huh.
They don't understand some of the finer points between stem moisture and dew moisture and the dry times and the bleaching and all the things that makes haymaking an art. But when my neighbors come over and they ask me how those conditioners performed, I just tell them to walk over to the haystack and pull out a stem. And the reaction is universally the same. Whoa, it's flat.
Yep. That's great.
So I never show, not very often, will somebody want to actually look at the conditioners. I just show them the haystack.
Right.
And I'm not blowing smoke at anybody here. The stems are flat.
Yeah.
The plant dries down faster. It makes a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the proof's in the pudding.
Yep.
That's for sure.
I mean, we actually did get to a point on our Timothy where we had to back the conditioners off just a little bit because it was actually starting to shred the stems, and it made everything a little funky. For the real Timothy guys that know about the node on the stem and that inner stem where you can get some green stem, there's folks out there that know what I'm talking about. You want that inner stem to be dry and the hay's ready to bale when you can break that node and break the inner stem. It was smashing that node.
Yeah, that's what we really like about the grass.
So when we went to break tests on the nodes, I'd say 75% of the nodes were completely smashed. And there wasn't even a question whether the inner stem was dry or not. Mm-hmm. I had some folks ask me that question. Some big Timothy producers asked me that question, and ho doggies, it worked.
Yeah, we really like to think that at least 90% of most of your forage is touched by your conditioner rolls. And that's why I always ask the question, what do you think is the most important part of your hay conditioning machine? And some people think, well, what do you mean? Well, what actually do you think? It's not they're ergonomically, correct steering wheel or this or that, right. It's not your fender that they readjusted for whatever, and people say different things, but my answer to that is definitely the conditioner rolls. I mean, because if you don't have conditioner rolls, I mean, so what?
There's still folks that run sickle mowers and
right. Yeah, it's really interesting.
There's a place in the market for that, but there's a reason that almost all new machines have conditioners.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's again, I think back to what we're talking about earlier in the podcast is, if you just want to upgrade your machine, look at your rolls. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And put new knives on, because obviously that's extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, cutting components or wear components that need to be taken care of all the time. Yeah.
On your second cutting, was the diameter of the stems noticeably different between your first and second?
Not much.
Okay.
We were, admittedly, we were a tickle late on our second cutting and super early on our first cutting. And that has more to do with being spread out over 35 miles and starting on alfalfa, going to grass, and then coming back to the alfalfa. That's just my operation. I'd say that the stem diameters were very similar.
Yeah, that explains too why you didn't have to adjust too much on that also.
Yep. But the setting for that fine stem alfalfa is too much for the Timothy. 100%. Yeah. 100%. We had to back it off a little bit.
Right.
Admittedly, we weren't getting the performance out of the swather as we were cutting the Timothy either. It did take more fuel and more horsepower. And when you go from 1.6 ton to the acre first cutting alfalfa to 2.5 ton Timothy, there's a meaningful difference there.
Absolutely. Did you find that with your second cutting, was there a noticeable difference in was your height about the same?
Yep. Okay. We should talk about the height. Some of that Timothy that we cut, it was chest high, and I was worried about wrapping and plugging. We didn't have any of those problems. I didn't. Right. At no point during the summer did we cut anything out of the conditioners. Nothing. I have heard some producers talk about short, like second cutting orchard grass that doesn't have a lot of stem structure to it, having troubles feeding through headers. But honestly, I didn't cut any of that kind of material. I can't speak to that that super almost non-existent stem where it's just leaf. I should say that I was happy with the windrow formation all the way along. On the rotary swathers, that has a lot to do with the direction of the turtles and the type of the knives, and there's and the forming shields and all of that. But the conditioners do play a role in it. But I didn't observe any problems with the formation of the windrow.
Yeah, that's great because, we often get asked that question too. Well, what do you recommend for your windrow width, and your forming shields and stuff? And, a lot of people definitely like to lay it out as flat as possible.
Yep.
What we always try to educate, because we've been out to so many farms and seen so many different type of forages and so on and so forth, we kind of like to have it go, instead of getting thrown like a really wide swath and thinner, kind of bringing it up and out. So it goes up and it falls like chop suey, like sticks,
like pickup sticks. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. That's what I was getting at.
And the idea that you're
sticks.
getting at there is standing that windrow up so the wind can blow through it. Yep.
Correct. Yep. And that seems to work pretty good.
And for us on the dry coast, tall, skinny windrows often work because our air is dry, but the ground may be wet. And I know that's not universally the case.
Yeah, so I think that's depending on where you're at and what you're cutting. But that's kind of, we talk to so many people that have so many different types of stuff. So our universal answer is, if you can just get it up and out instead of throwing it into the ground and wide, you can kind of like pickup sticks, like you said, you just mound it like that. It's kind of like honeycomb.
Yep.
So that any air at all gets through there, and it doesn't get, or that it's able to go through that whole windrow and help dry it as much as possible.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, that sounds like you had pretty dang good success with everything overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't. I did want to mention that when the conditioners came, they were very well packaged. We didn't have any damage on the conditioners when they arrived. And I know that's like a technical thing that you probably have to fight with more than anybody else. But we didn't have any troubles. It came with JB Weld. I wanted to tell this story. The JB Weld is used to repair cuts in the conditioner rolls because it's a rubber coating. It's not steel, it's rubber. And the instructions tell you to dry out what's in the cut, and that because you don't want to trap water in the rubber. Dry it out, put JB Weld in it, probably like cardboard and a ratchet strap to kind of hold it in place. Does that sound? That's how I would have done it. Is that the recommendation?
Typically what I tell people, you just take some duct tape.
Oh, yeah, duct tape would work.
Yeah, just take duct tape. And depending on your cut and chunk or whatever you're trying to repair, because I'm glad that was one of my last notes I was going to ask you was if you had to use that at all. And if you, after each cutting, did you look at your rolls to see if there was cuts and were there a lot or was there any at all? And if there was, did you use the JB Weld for that? And ironically, it's kind of funny because JB Weld has a lot of different ones that they sell. One's for plastic, one's for rubber, one's for steel. Well, as you can see, ours that we send to you complimentary is JB Weld steel. So we just happened to, years ago when we started this whole hay roller thing, we just kind of happened upon it. I just wonder if this wouldn't work. And so I did it and I went, oh my gosh, this works great. It bonded so nicely. It was crazy. And it gets really, really hard. So but the whole point of it is it's repairable. Yeah. I think that's probably what you're getting at, is you've got a thick enough mat of rubber in there where if it does cut, you can, like I said, blow that out. You take a screwdriver or whatever, you open up that gap, you shove that epoxy in there and you squeeze it together, just wipe off the top. You take some a piece of gray tape or duct tape, and you just put it right over the top. And you can leave it on there if you want or don't. It doesn't really matter. But,
Right.
usually you take it off and it's as good as new. And again, that's for big time maintenance. If it would have happened to cut all the way down to the core,
Mm-hmm.
we definitely want that to be repaired, because that moisture is like any water. It will find a way. And if there's a little bit of a cut going all the way down to the core, it will turn acidic along with the juices of the material
Yep.
and the forage, and it'll turn to rust. And that's how you lose your bonding of your rubber to your steel core.
Ah,
That
gotcha.
turns acidic, and it turns to rust. And if you don't repair that, your rubber is going to start to loosen away from the steel and the bond of the adhesive and such. And
Yep.
it's just a very easy, inexpensive way to just do a little bit of maintenance repair.
Yep.
So,
Wait,
yeah.
actually, we didn't have any cuts or gouges or anything in the rollers this year. I mean,
That's good.
that's probably some of the benefit I get from the money I spend on harrowing everything in the spring. And
Right.
yeah,
Did you happen to run anything through them, like rocks or?
yes, we did. We have a little bit of a groove cut in one of the, not cut, it's more like a depression, like a rope wrapped around it, really, really tight kind of thought process. Right dead smack in the middle. It really, yeah, and maybe I'll send you a picture here when we're done.
Yeah.
But that's the only. I'm going to even stop shy of calling it damage. They're just not absolutely perfectly new anymore. But we also did. I mean, we did hundreds of acres, so it's possible. I don't think we ran any rocks through it. I didn't hear any stories from the operators. I'm not sure what caused that depression all the way around that one roller.
Yeah, interesting. We've heard hubcaps, irrigation pipes, animal, barbed wire.
Yep.
Tires.
It just didn't happen. Yes. The worst one I ever did was about 100 yards out into the field. It was the tire with the rim.
Oh, whoa.
That came off of somebody's car and rolled out into the field, and the grass was so tall they couldn't find it. Well, I didn't find it with my rotary, luckily. I found it with my old 499 sickle machine that's a little more forgiving. But and the basketball. Basketballs sound approximately like a thermonuclear device detonating underneath your seat.
I bet.
Just in case anybody's wondering what happens when you hit a basketball with a swather. It's a really big, loud boom, and you got to go change your shorts.
I bet you do. But, it's good that they pass things through. And typically if it's larger than a softball, it'll kick it out. If it's smaller than that, it'll pass it through. Mm-hmm. Open up, and the thicker rubber mat helps with that also.
Yep.
Versus a Chevron groove roll where you've got probably, I don't even know if it's a 1/4 inch of rubber at the bottom of the groove there. There's just a little bit of rubber there, so that definitely helps. With the conditioning?
Would you call this a spiral, a helical design?
It's a helical groove.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, rifle barrel twist type thing.
Yeah. That's the way to think about
the terminology is it's definitely a helical groove. Yeah, for sure.
Not that the terminology actually matters. Just if anybody is wondering about it, where can they go for more information?
You can go to bdrollers.com, or you can dial 320-634-5115 as our office, and our sales guys will be happy to help you.
Perfect. You have some new product lines that you're running. Bearings and round baler parts. Can you take us through that?
Sure. Yeah, we sell all brand new bearings for all of our rollers, and it is top of the line. They all are the same. They're a Fafner bearing. The John Deere rollers right now we do not sell because of the Plain and simple. It's all a money thing. It's just, we don't know if we can make enough money even just to carry the dang things. It's a pretty crazy difference between Massey, AGCO, and CNH to John Deere. It's a price point type thing, but we do sell on the AGCO, Massey, and for all the CNH rollers that we carry. We have brand new bearings all in stock. And then as far as the baler rollers, we do make aftermarket rollers for those. And it's basically just the John Deere side of things right now. We're looking at getting into making brand new stuff, but we do refurbish that.
And we're talking about the roller drum on the bottom of the bale chamber.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and it depends on what machine you have, but there could be several different rubber rollers in there that carry the belts, whether it's one belt or if it's 5 or 6, or depending on, or 7. So that's some of the new stuff that we're researching and getting into a lot more. We don't carry a lot of those on hand. I know we're doing a lot of Kuhn parts now, that the short rollers, it takes 4 rollers in their pull behind machines and stuff. We're starting to stock those. There got a lot of call for that particular machine. So we're just always expanding, and we listen to our customers and just try to figure out, well, what is best thing we can do to help out the customer and keep in stock, because you can't keep everything. It's just, you just can't. It's just
right.
It's too much, too expensive. But we do carry all, go to the website, and we carry most all major brand of rolls in stock for all brand name machines.
Again, we've been talking with Dan Ostrander with BD Rollers, and for more information, you can go to bdrollers.com.
Hey, thank you so much, Paul, for having me on again today. It was a pleasure.
This episode has been sponsored by Krone. For more information, visit krone-na.com. A big thank you to Nick Palmieri at Palmieri Sound for doing all of our audio editing and making me and my guests sound like a genius. Thank you to Jessica Palmieri for doing all of our social media coordination.